My goal is to perform for audiences that are receptive to the kinds of messages that I have to share. Audiences who have been through painful experiences, depression, drug use, mental health, empowering kids, young girls, helping them to have more faith in themselves. And I would say that music has inspired me, watching other artists who have the freedom and the courage to really be themselves and embrace who they are and what they want to express. And watching other people do that, I think maybe I can do it too. And if I can do that and be brave enough and bold enough to shine in my full potential, my full light, that maybe other people will see me and think that they can do it too.
So where my story really starts is that when I was your age, I was in Gamma Phi Beta, and I was like a straight A student and very dedicated to academics and all of that kind of stuff. But I was also extremely isolated. I was a total lone wolf, and I sort of treated Gamma Phi and school like it was like my professional life. And then I had my personal life over here, which I kept pretty private and pretty secret. Part of the reason for that was because I was going through a lot of really hard experiences that I was ashamed of, and I didn't feel like anybody else would understand. I think I also felt like I didn't want anybody to get up in my business. I didn't want anybody to interrupt what I was up to, because some of the things I was up to were not really on the up and up. I did coke in college, and I kept that a secret. It certainly isn't something that was acceptable in Gamma Phi. And, I didn't go out to bars much. I went out a few times with my sorority sisters. I just wasn't really interested in the partying scene. I was much more interested in being by myself and writing my papers. And I enjoyed Gamma Phi for the sisterhood and getting to do dinners and getting to do PACE and bring speakers in and talk about informative topics. But what I really struggled with was connecting socially and just letting anybody in and having real friends, knowing how to be a friend and knowing how to let other people be my friend. It's interesting because, they say that Gamma Phi is a lifelong thing, and it's really been true for me that Gamma Phi has had a significant impact in my life since college. I've written 2 original songs for Gamma Phi Beta philanthropic videos, and now I'm speaking here, so that's pretty amazing. And I just feel like the relationships that I did develop when I was in college became stronger after college for me when I started learning to open up and connect with other people more genuinely. So some of the things that happened for me, I struggle with a bipolar diagnosis, bipolar depression. My official diagnosis is bipolar 2 with borderline traits. And what that means is that I go through extreme ups and downs. I'm on medication that helps stabilize my moods. I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody, and I certainly don't tell anybody that they shouldn't take medication. I think it's a very personal experience, a very personal choice how to deal with mental health issues. But when I was in college, I really didn't understand what was happening to me. I knew that, every winter quarter it seemed like I had to drop all my classes except maybe one that was required and that was only offered that quarter, and lay in bed and just sleep a lot and feel really low. And because I was going through that kind of stuff, it was really hard to open up and tell people what was going on. I was ashamed that I was laying in bed and I was not excited about participating in life, and those feelings are really, really crushing. It's hard when you can see the beauty going on in life all around you, but you can't feel excited about it and you can't feel like you're a part of it. And so it was a really challenging time, and I ended up living in the sorority for 1 year, and then I ended up getting my own apartment. I worked a little bit, I was a nanny, but like I said, one of the things that's really a big component of my story is relationships, romantic relationships. And I'm doing quotations there because my romantic relationships were really kind of a mess. And it was also something that I just didn't have the experience at that time. I didn't have the life experience to know any better sort of what I was getting into. And because I wasn't connecting with other people or really being honest about where I was at, nobody could really help me or point anything out to me. And even if they did, who's to say that I was going to listen? So When I was 19, I met this guy, and he was 20 years older than me. He drove a limousine, which at the time I thought was kind of flashy and cool. And he asked me if I wanted to go for a limo ride, and I said no, because I was a smart girl. So then I got back to my dorm room, and one of my friends was outside, and I was like, hey, do you want to go for a limo ride? And she said yes, and I was like, well, now I've got a partner in crime, so it's okay. So we go for this limo ride with this guy, and from the get-go, like, nothing went wrong that night, but he dropped us off, and he had my phone number at this point, and he started texting me, like, over and over and over and over and over, and I was kind of like, whoa, this is weird, this is, like, a lot. Just like, you're so amazing, and you're so fantastic, and da-da-da-da-da. So because I was so lonely, and this person was giving me all this attention, I sort of tolerated it and allowed it, even though, like, hanging out with a guy 20 years older than me may not have been the best decision. And I was ashamed of that too, because I knew, like, other people probably aren't going to think this is very acceptable, so I kept it a secret. And what ended up happening was he kind of infiltrated my life. I had a boyfriend for a little while that I really loved. He was like my first love. And this is where the story gets a little bit harder. I was doing a part-time job. I was dealing blackjack at parties, and I was like really proud of myself because I was good at getting tips. And I had a car accident and didn't have a car for a while, so the person I was working for, he was giving me rides to these parties, and one night he asked me if I wanted to go to a party with, like, some of his coworkers and whatnot, like older people, and I thought that was really cool too. So I go to this party, and like I said, I did coke in college off and on, and that ended up being with this 20 years older guy, which we'll get back to. But I also drank way too much at that party, and I got myself into a situation where at the end of the night he was helping me along. He was quite happy to let me drink as much as I wanted. And at the end of the night I asked him to take me home, and he took me to his home. So long story short, that ended up in a situation that I was very ashamed of. I did end up sleeping with him, and even to this day, I don't know if I could even call it date rape, because I took action. Like, I felt like, well, he's not going to let me go home, and it's not going to be over until it's over, so why don't I just take the initiative and get it over with? So that's the situation I got myself into. I was so devastated, and I called my boyfriend at the time, and I told him what happened because I wanted to be honest and upstanding. He freaked out on me, he stopped talking to me, and at that point, guess who was waiting in the wings to swoop in and just be the hero? 20 years older guy. So I started hanging out with him and eventually gave in, started sleeping with him. He would give me coke sometimes. I'd stay up all night, write my papers, turn them in, and get an A, and then think, don't they know that I'm crazy? Because I was high at the time. So I had a lot of really hard, bad stuff going on in college, and I wasn't open about it, and I didn't tell anybody about it. And, you know, on the surface, I was really maintaining this pretty picture, right? I get these good grades, and I'm in the sorority, and, you know, nothing's wrong. Nobody look at me, nothing's wrong. And, you know, I was able to keep it going for quite a while.